Welcome to Pop Culture Roulette for all your pop culture needs. We're America's podcast. Welcome everybody. I'm joined here by Justin,
Hey, what's going on, guys? Guy?
and after 1 week of being back at full strength, we're back down a man because Jeremy decided that anime is more important.
Can't blame the guy.
Ah, yeah, you're right. I mean, this is his annual tradition, and he does look forward to it. So he always comes back with great stories. So looking forward to hearing about it when he gets back.
He will be missed.
He will, he will be missed. It's not
Yeah,
like I mean,
I'll
he's
miss him
coming
this
back.
week.
Yeah, he's not. It's not like
Doesn't mean
he's
I doesn't mean I can't miss the guy.
all right. I mean, it's not like he's been permanently banned or anything.
We never know.
That is true.
Should
Speaking
send
of
him down with some should send him down with some business cards.
permanently banned, some news came out in the last week or so that I kind of wanted to talk about, and it led me to thinking about some just other things in general. But Rob Manfred, who, as we have established, hates baseball,
hmm
even though he is the commissioner of baseball. Um,
Hey, he still cashes the paychecks.
that is true.
I mean, we might
Um,
not like our jobs either, but we still show up because we get paid.
Made a decision this week that, well, we're going to discuss whether or not we think it's the right decision or not. But basically, he said that lifetime bans are exactly that, lifetime. So when a player who's been put on the lifetime ban list dies, they are now once again eligible to be voted into the Hall of Fame. Now, that is Major League Baseball Hall of Fame and Major League Baseball are run by two separate entities. They work together, but the Hall of Fame doesn't necessarily have to listen to Major League Baseball.
Hmm.
91, they did vote to say that if Major League Baseball has put you on a banned list, we are going to honor that. So that's why all these men that we're going to talk about have been banned from baseball. Now, what before we get into this list, because I went through and I was just like I was curious how many people are actually, lifetime banned, permanently banned from baseball. What do you feel about the Pete Rose of it all?
Uh, I think he should be in. I don't think he should have got a lifetime ban, if that's what your question is.
Yes and
I mean,
no. I
he
mean,
didn't do anything as a player, right? It was just as a coach,
well,
and it was never he never bet on his own team
yes, he did.
for to win. I'm assuming not to
Yes, to
lose.
win.
All right.
But the problem with Pete Rose, through three different baseball commissioners, had multiple opportunities to get his ban lifted. He sat down with Bart Giamatti, Fay Vincent, and Bud Selig, and actually, I guess four, Rob Manfred, um, and basically was told every time, admit what you did, and we'll talk about reinstating you. Show remorse for what you did, and we'll talk about reinstating you, and then promise you won't do it again. And every time Pete Rose said, "No, I'm good."
Uh,
Pete Rose changed his story. At first, he was like, "Well, yeah, I gambled, but I never gambled on baseball." Which, I mean, they have evidence. Like they've got, they it was kind of like one of those like we have you on video. Like stop denying it. Like we know you did. And he was like, "No, I didn't." And then at some point, he wrote a book. It was like, "Well, I gambled on baseball, but I never gambled on the Reds." And then at some point, he's like, "Well, I did gamble on the Reds, but I only ever gambled on like us to win." So like he constantly changed his story, and he was just unrepentant about the whole thing. Now, I do think that Major League Base, it's the Hall of Fame. It's not the Hall of Morality.
Right.
So keeping a player out who is the all-time hits leader and one of the greater offensive players of all time is kind of a travesty. But at the same time, like, and we're gonna get to this list, like, it's kind of an optics thing. Like there's a couple guys when we get into the other sports where like they did some stuff that like, just because I mean, once gambling gets involved, like it puts you in a position. And so I don't know, like I don't know how I feel about the Pete Rose of it all.
I
Because
I I would say he should. Did he do anything as a player, or was it all just as a manager?
well, see, that's the weird part. He's the last player manager that baseball has ever had, baseball has had. Because for the last 3 years of his playing career, he was a player manager. He was the manager of the Reds as well as the player.
Hmm.
I don't, I didn't delve too far into how much of it was that he was an everyday day player or if he just put himself in as a pinch hitter or, what exactly it was. So, I mean, there was a few years where he was both.
Because I say based on just what he did as a player, he should be in.
Yeah. There's a bunch of guys that are not on the permanently banned list. They're kind of on the shadow ban list. Clemens, Bonds, McGuire, Sosa, Canseco. Like some of those guys absolutely deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. But that gets us into a different argument of does steroids or performance enhancing drugs, PEDs, is that different than gambling?
Yeah, it's different.
Okay. So, I mean, because gambling, and we'll get there, definitely leads to some very different things. I mean, I just remembered, I didn't write it down on the list, but you have Tim Donaghy, who,
Uh, yeah,
for the NBA, who was a referee who gambled on basketball. Now, he claims he never fixed any games. He just bet on what the commissioner was telling him to do. And so
well,
he,
they also said they would have bets to see who would go the longest without calling foul.
right.
Kind of could fix a game that way.
Yes. So, he said he wasn't fixing the games. He was just like, well, not Bud Selig because he was baseball. David Stern
David Stern.
would tell me, don't call fouls on this player or call fouls on this player or
Yeah.
let this team, make sure this team,
Mainly Jordan.
yeah, make sure this team doesn't necessarily, I'm not saying they got to win. I'm just saying make sure this team looks good. And so like he would gamble on stuff like that. That's if you believe that he wasn't, actively going, well, I'm not going to call a foul on that guy. I want to make sure I get that extra 2 points.
Yeah.
You know. But let's go down this list here. It's going to be a quick list because I didn't write down a lot of names. So 1919, the Chicago White Sox, known more as the Chicago Black Sox,
Yeah.
because 8 players and one St. Louis Brown were permanently banned for fixing the World Series. So that would include Shoeless Joe Jackson and then a bunch of guys that no one's ever.
Right. He's the main one.
His numbers are probably Hall of Fame numbers, but because he was actually caught fixing games, is that different than what Pete Rose was doing?
Yes.
So would you reinstate Shoe or not now that he's Shoeless Joe has kind of been reinstated, or so much as like, just they're like, well, he's eligible now where he wasn't before. Do you vote him into the Hall of Fame, or do you keep him out because like we know for a fact he fixed games?
I'd keep him out for that. Like, he fixed games. He was throwing games. Didn't he get money for doing that too?
Yes. Now,
Yeah.
but the crazy thing is like you look at his stats for that World Series, and like he had a really good World Series, but then like as some of the reading, it was like it was all like or not extra inning, but late inning stuff, or like he knew he could do some.
Game's
He
already over.
game's already over, or like you know these guys are already fucking up enough that I can do this. So,
Yeah.
and he's
I think
another
he
one
would
like
stay out.
he's another one like Rose who apparently changed his story many times over the course of his life. 1921, a guy named Jean Paulette accepted a loan tied to gambling. Also in the same year, Benny Koff, one of the rare baseball guys, in fact, I think the only baseball guy that isn't thrown wasn't thrown out for gambling, auto theft. Benny Koff apparently stole a car, and then they caught him with it, and somehow that got a lifetime ban.
Yeah. See, the gambling one, I mean, unless you're intentionally throwing games, I mean, if you're just betting on games, I think that's okay. And then stealing a car, that makes no sense to give someone a lifetime ban.
Right. Well, we'll get to some really weird ones. This one is one of the dumber ones. 1922, Phil Douglas wrote another player on another team asking him to throw the game.
That got him a lifetime ban.
Yes.
Hey, will you throw
To
this game for us? Yeah, go fuck yourself. No,
right.
no lifetime ban.
Exactly. Well, that the player immediately went to his coach and was like, "Coach, this guy sent me a letter." Like, first off, if you're gonna ask somebody something like that, you don't do it in writing.
Yeah, make sure the guy's not a snitch.
Right, and also but you don't do it in writing so that like if the guy is a snitch, well, I asked him to do that. No, I didn't say that.
It's right
Right
in
here.
writing.
Right here in writing. Okay, I guess I did. Um,
Suspension, yes. Lifetime ban, no.
well, but I mean that's a integrity thing. Like that's if you let one guy who did it stay in the game, then like can you trust the results of any game? I
Um,
mean, because the NBA, and we'll get to the NBA in a few minutes, obviously had a real problem at some point with what was going on with Tim Donaghy. Um, Jimmy O'Connell in 1924, Jimmy O'Connell and Koa Cozy Dolan. Coach, haha, stupid autocorrect changes a lot of stuff. I typed in a last name of like, we'll get there because it was the NBA, but like I typed in like Porter and it changed it to like Marple or something. But they accepted bribes for throwing games. 1943, the Philadelphia Phillies president William Cox was betting on his own team to win repeatedly, so he received a lifetime ban.
the president,
Yes,
yeah, he has no, unless
I
well, he's
mean,
betting on him to win. He's not like telling the coach to pull this player out.
right.
I
I
just think
mean,
my team, I'm overconfident in my team.
yeah, and that's and again, that's one of those like perception things. Like just because you said you bet on because now you have to question every decision that the president made. Like if he traded one of the better players for a bag of socks, like was it because they really needed socks or because he wanted to win some bets?
Yeah.
Okay, and then obviously Pete Rose in '89, and then the most recent one who apparently we're so far into not talking about this kind of stuff anymore that I didn't even realize it had happened, and I'm gonna butcher this name. Tucapita Marcano in 2024, so just last year, was caught gambling on baseball, so therefore banned for life, as well as a lot of other gambling that he was.
I was gonna say, at this point, if you're gambling and you know how strict these leagues are, you're an idiot.
Right.
Am I allowed to bet on the Packers as an owner?
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and assume that, your ownership in the Packers, your what, one stock
Yeah.
is not going to preclude you. I mean, now if you had a controlling interest in the Packers, like if you had like, 51% to stock or even more than like if you even had like probably a 5% or a 10%, if you had some sort of voting interest where your vote actually mattered. Like, because if you went up there to the shareholder meeting right now, like that happens every year, your vote wouldn't change or do anything, right? Like
Probably not.
yeah. So I'm assuming that means you get to gamble on football and it not be an issue.
All right. So like when I picked like Jordan Love for MVP, I'm betting on my own team. I'm betting for them.
Right.
Don't ban me, NFL.
Yeah, it's one of those things that like I don't know like how legitimate is the Packers ownership stock certificate? I mean, I know it's because you're not like legally allowed to sell it, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I think you can will it to somebody, but I don't
Right.
think you can sell it.
Yeah. So, and I bet you there's all sorts of stipulations if you were to read the fine print on what kind of say so in the ownership of the team you actually have. Speaking of football, it's a much shorter list for football. 1947, Merle Hapes was caught fixing the 1946 NFL championship where the Giants lost to the Bears.
All right.
He was a New York Giant. He was caught fixing the championship game. So I would think that means the Bears NFL championship of 1946 illegitimate.
I'll agree.
Also, a guy named Philchuk was also banned, but he was later reinstated, and I didn't really get into why good old Merle was banned for life and Frank was allowed back in.
Yeah,
Yeah. 1999, Ray Caruth murdered his pregnant girlfriend or fiance or wife. I don't remember exactly what the status of their relationship was. So he received a lifetime ban.
makes sense.
Yeah. So this one is kind of a little weird, and it was hard to understand exactly what happened. But in 1925, Art Foltz hired a high school team to play as the Milwaukee Badgers, which apparently was an NFL team or some version of the NFL, to play against his Chicago Cardinals so that the Chicago Cardinals would have a better percent winning percentage.
All right. And they lost, right?
The Chicago Cardinals stomped them because
Um,
they were grown men playing a high school football
playing
team.
against high schoolers.
He was reinstated a year later, but they said in the articles that I was reading said that mainly he was reinstated a year later to keep him from joining the very first version of the AFL. He never actually played football ever again. So it's kind of one of those like, oh yeah, you're back in, but not really. Like
Yeah,
we're just doing this to legally keep you from doing something else.
makes sense.
But that's a very short because like Plaxico
That
Burress shot
that was it for
himself.
the NFL.
That's it for the NFL.
I'm surprised Hernandez didn't make the list.
Um, yeah, I mean, Plaxico Burress shot himself in the leg. Got like a 2 year suspension. Michael Vick did what he did. He got his
Uh,
suspension was for as long as he was in jail and then another year or two after that. But he
Yeah,
came back. So apparently the NFL, Pac-Man Jones, Dante Stallworth, like these men who did some,
you got to assume Deshaun Jackson's throwing games the way he drops the ball at the goal line.
or he's just an idiot, one of the
Nah.
two.
I mean, he's done it more than once.
Yeah, that is true. But yeah, no, the NFL apparently very look the other way on a lot of stuff, or like I
Dante
said,
Stallworth.
Dante Stallworth killed a guy and got a year suspension.
Yeah. Well, on what, under the influence and a hit and run or something
Yeah, some,
in
um,
Florida.
I do
Ray
wonder,
Lewis.
I do wonder in today's climate if Dante Stallworth was to do that now, if it would be a different, than in the early 2000s, late 90s, whenever it was that Dante Stallworth did that. Basketball, I didn't really get too deep into it because it was a lot of information and none of these names meant anything to me. But 36 players and one ref from a bunch of different colleges in the New York area. It was called the CCNY point shaving scandal of 1951. So it was a bunch of just local New York colleges that all played in the Madison Square Garden. So I guess a bunch of various different players. Some of them got drafted but never set foot on the court, or maybe had just started playing when it all broke. But like, yeah, 36 players there, and one
All right.
referee got banned. Then 10 years later, apparently nobody learned their lesson. Around 50 people from 22 different schools in the 1961 NCAA gambling scandal hit. The only two names that mattered to me or I'd ever heard of was Connie Hawkins,
All right.
who played. He did some more. I think he was more of a Harlem Globetrotter because he was banned from the NBA. I know he also played in the ABA for a lot. Same thing with a guy named Roger Brown. Actually has his number retired by the Pacers because of what he did in when the Pacers were the ABA before they moved over to the NBA. Both of those men are in the Hall of Fame. Now, the Basketball Hall of Fame isn't just professional basketball. It is all levels of basketball. So, like, there's a lot of guys who are in the Naismith Hall of Fame who never made it out of college or were only like super all-stars as college players.
Yeah, they have some from whatever ABA too that were never in the
Yeah,
NBA.
yeah, which is where those two guys, Connie Hawkins and Roger Brown, 1981, so 20 years later, still didn't learn her lesson. Three players from Boston College were banned for point shavings. And then we get to 1986 where I'm starting to see some names that I at least recognize. This isn't one of them, but John Drew for drugs, 87 Eddie Johnson for drugs, 89 Chris Washburn, which is a name that kind of rings a bell. Drugs.
I know Jamal Marshburn.
Yeah, maybe that's what I was thinking of. This name I definitely know. Roy Tarpley in 95, drugs. 96, Richard Dumas for drugs. He played for the Suns and a bunch of other teams, so that's a name I know. 2014, Donald Sterling,
Ah,
the
owner of the Clippers
owner of the Clippers. He was banned for being a racist asshole.
and
Uh,
possibly drugs.
well, I mean, he's an old guy, so who knows what else he was involved in. But I know he there was a lot of
Yeah, racist emails.
racist emails and some landlord like stuff that he was doing, where he kind of raised his money from. And this one you're going to know more about than I do, but in 2017, OJ Mayo.
Oh, yeah, when he was with the Bucks.
Um,
Uh,
Now, I guess technically it's not a lifetime ban because I guess he is eligible to apply for reinstatement. He just never has done it.
yeah, I don't think I don't remember what he got suspended
It was drugs.
was yeah,
Yeah, I mean he's one of those guys that like all the talent in the world, he just couldn't stop smoking pot and a couple other things long enough
right.
to stay on the court. And then I think we've talked about this very briefly over the last year or so, but in 2024, Jonte Porter was
Yeah.
lifetime banned for actually fixing games, like taking himself out of games or making sure he missed free throws, like betting on himself to do certain line, because in the NBA you can bet like line like how many minutes people are going to have, how
Yeah,
many
minutes,
points are.
points, assists, over plus minus, yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
stuff.
So he was doing a lot of that, on his own. So yeah, that's
I know Chris Anderson got suspended. Wasn't a lifetime, but he's been suspended a couple times, I think, for drugs. But then he was back. Uh, I know Gilbert Arenas used to gamble on flights.
yeah,
He'd
I
gamble with
know.
teammates playing cards
Well, and Gilbert Arenas pulled a gun on
on a plane. Yeah.
on a fellow player. Well, I thought it was in the
Mhm.
locker room. I didn't think it was on a plane, but
It could have been
it could have been both. But Agent Double Zero or whatever he called himself, like it was
just Agent Zero.
Agent Zero. Okay, yeah, it just like the NBA. It was so it's I don't know. A lot of these guys are like, oh, like you're gonna let them do that, but like the NFL is like, well, you killed the guy, but well, it was off the field, so who cares? 1 year, come back. Um, and then in hockey, it's a very short list.
Do you think I don't know if any of these are any hockey ones drugs?
No.
Okay.
Uh,
With today's the way things are today, do you think if someone fails a drug test that he should be suspended?
I mean, it depends on the drug.
Marijuana.
No.
Like, yeah, I mean, as long as they're not on the sideline
Well, I
right
know.
before a game, if they're doing it on on their day off on a Wednesday,
Yeah, and honestly, it's a very strange situation that we're in currently anyway with marijuana more than any other drug, is that in a lot of states it's legal.
we are not one of
And
them.
no, we are not one of them. So it's kind of one of those like if you're playing for the Broncos, it's kind of hard for the Broncos to have a rule against marijuana where like I mean the Packers could because it is illegal in this state. But, but the NFL, I guess working for the NFL kind of super like it's the same thing with like you work for the NFL, so you cannot gamble on NFL games. You can gamble on anything else, but you cannot gamble on the NFL. That's why a bunch of those Detroit Lion players got a whole bunch of suspensions because they were gambling on NFL games.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Well, I can't you gamble on the NFL as long as you're not on the premises?
no, you can't get. They were just dumb enough to do it on the
And
premises
yeah, in the locker room.
in the lock. So I mean, it was easier to catch them. That and like I mean, was it the wide receiver? Was it the Falcons wide receiver who got a year-long suspension when he signed up and then started gambling under his own name?
Oh yeah. Is that Calvin Ridley?
Maybe, but I don't. I can't remember, so I don't want to put ourselves in some sort of liable situation and accuse people of things that
Fair.
Um, no, I do want to talk about the three guys on the hockey list because, or I guess there's actually a couple, but the one in particular, 1927, Billy Kotu, was a lifetime ban because during a Stanley Cup game in 1927, he assaulted two of the referees and incited a bench clearing brawl.
All right. That's hockey.
Yeah, that's hockey. Yeah, so assaulted the referees, just was like, I've had enough, and just started swinging sticks and fists. 1948, three players from the Bruins were banned for life for gambling, and then in 2014, Slava Voinov was essentially given a lifetime ban for domestic abuse.
All right, that's fair.
Yeah, they were like, it's not official. Like he's still kind of banned. Well, I mean, at 2014, that was 11 years ago. There's no way that he's probably even in hockey playing shape at this point. But it was kind of one of those like you're suspended. Well, when am I going to be off suspension? We'll let you know. How
Yeah.
about now? No.
Can I come back now? No.
Like I mean it. I do
Magic
know.
Magic 8 Ball, try again later.
I do know that the NHL has a very different drug policy than any of the other professional sports. If you fail a drug test for one of the various different illegal drugs, you are not immediately suspended. You are given a chance to enter a drug treatment program.
All right.
And if you refuse to enter the drug treatment program, then they start talking about suspensions. After you enter said drug treatment program and you come out, if you get caught again, there are suspensions, and then there's an escalation of how many times you can get caught before like it's just like you're done. So hockey, the most violent of the four professional sports, apparently takes the drug abuse thing a lot more like hands-on of like, you know, we're gonna get you help. Where in a lot of the other sports, they're like, oh, you did drugs, get out.
You're done.
You're done. So I feel like, but with all of the Hall of Fames, it's one of those like, it's hard to go and say, as one of the greatest players of all time in Pete Rose and say, you're not allowed in the Hall of Fame because of this one thing you did off the field. I mean,
Right.
could it have potentially affected what you did on the field? Yes. I don't know if you put Pete Rose's plaque up because he's going to be. I don't know about Shoeless Joe Jackson because we do know for a fact that he fixed World Series games.
Yeah, he cost them games.
Right. Um, so I don't know if because it's gonna have to go to the Veterans Committee. It's not because there's the two different ways you get in the Hall of Fame where you hit a certain level of playing time, you retire 5 years later, you're automatically on the list. If you
Right.
receive above, I think it's like 15% or 5%. It's a very low number that you have to receive above. You can stay on the list. You have to get above, I think, 75% to get into the Hall of Fame. And then you're only allowed to be on so many years. So like if you hang out at 50%, but you hang out at 50% for like 10 years, you're off the list. Then you go over to the Veterans Committee where there's a group of veteran players and veteran coaches and people. I think there are already people who are in the Hall of Fame who then debate and go, well, all these idiot writers, because as we talked about in one of the episodes in the last few months, where Ichiro got in at 99% because one guy was like,
No, no
one,
one's first ballot.
no one's first ballot. Nobody should get in 100%. I still want to say, fuck that guy. Uh, um, But there's the Veterans Committee who goes, yeah, the writers don't know what they're talking about. This guy should be in.
Like
I,
the NFL does that too. That's
yeah,
why I like Leroy Butler and Sterling Sharp and Jerry Kramer.
right.
That's how they all got in.
Because I don't think the NFL does any writer voting for the Hall of Fame, right? It's all just veterans who talk about it.
I think there's some writers. I
Okay,
think. I don't know for sure.
but it's more of a committee. Like it's not like a random ballot of like because the MLB Hall of Fame, I think it's like two writers for whatever, or two, at least two writers for every major league city. If for newspapers or blog, I don't even know since newspapers barely exist anymore. Exactly what, how they, but
Yeah, it's there's writers and stuff in there too.
okay. Yeah, so I don't know. Whatever the groups are that it seems that like football seems to be as much as I love baseball, I feel like baseball is one of the weaker Hall of Fames when it comes to the voting process. Just because it's so stupid. Like, because there's such a cut and dry, like, clearly this guy deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Stop saying he doesn't,
Yeah.
Um,
Hit some people are 100 percenters.
right.
Wasn't Mariano Rivera 100%?
He is the only
Like,
person.
I'll
He
just
is
say
the
one of
only
the few.
not one of the few, the only person who's ever gotten into the Hall of Fame for Major League Baseball at 100%, which is weird because Major League Baseball has had such a long history of not putting relief pitchers or closers into the Hall of Fame at all. And then you get Mariano Rivera, who gets in as the first 100%er.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, what? Like,
And Ichiro 99.
yeah. Cal Ripken Jr. was at like 96 or 97. It was like, come on now. Like, what kind of bullshit is this?
Yeah. You know he's getting in. He should be 100%.
Yeah.
No, no.
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of where I stand. Like I'm on the fence about the Pete Rose thing because he was such just a garbage human. But, it's not a hall of morality, it's a hall of fame.
Yeah.
You know,
He's not a Hall of Fame human. He's a Hall of Fame baseball player.
right. And if you want to start retroactively applying morality into who gets in the Hall of Fame, there's a lot of guys you're going to have to start going and taking out,
Yeah.
you
You'll
know.
have to start booting people.
Yeah. So I do
The baseball Hall of Shame wing.
I do think that there needs to be, I don't necessarily know about an asterisk, but some sort of separate plaque or something that goes, it acknowledges what Pete Rose did as a player and as a manager, but goes, he also kind of did this. Same thing with Well, see, and that's the weird thing with like Clemens and Bonds. Those two guys still deny that they ever did PEDs. And I don't think either one of them ever failed a drug test.
That's hard to keep them out too, then if they've never failed.
But the rumors are so strong and the evidence is so kind of there.
Yeah.
McGuire, Canseco, Sosa, they failed. A-Rod, they failed drug test or they admitted it. Rafael Palmeiro. So, like, these are the guys that you're like, man. But you also have to look at the era in which they played. Almost all the players were doing it at that time. So it's like, and
Yeah,
at
you
the end of the
wonder how many
day,
other people would have failed too. They kind of looked the other way because that's what they
hey,
wanted. They wanted
absolute.
baseball to be like.
In '94, when the strike happened, a group of doctors went to Bud Selig and said, Bud, you have a problem in the Major League Baseball. You have a steroid problem. You have a drug issue. This is the perfect time to do something. You've got the whole league on strike. You can make this an issue. And Bud Selig said, no, my players would never do anything like that. You're crazy.
I have used cars to sell.
um, and I think at some level, Bud knew that getting people back in the seats and getting tickets sold, getting TV needed Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa
Yeah,
because
you needed it for baseball.
that you lost the entire 95 season. Ticket sales for 96, 97 weren't great. 98, that Mark McGuire Sammy Sosa home run chase saved baseball. I mean, they were breaking into primetime television to show you live at bats of McGuire and Sosa. Like every time one of those guys came up to bat, ESPN would cut whatever they're doing to show you that stuff. I think it
Yeah,
was even getting cut into like regular broadcasting because that was, I mean, somebody was making an assault on the Roger Maris single season home run record. And not only was one of them doing it, two of them were doing. We looked the other way. We didn't want to see that these guys were. I mean, McGuire is a bad example because McGuire was always a giant human. He just got
yeah,
bigger. But like we didn't look. We all should have looked at Sammy Sosa and been like 2 years ago when you were a White Sox, you were a skinny twig. Now you're a Cub and you're a giant menace. Like
yeah. Isn't wasn't Bonds kind of the same? He
Bonds is
got bigger, but he wasn't
Bonds
always
got bigger,
massive.
but he was Bonds, and that's the thing with like Bonds is Bonds was a Hall of Famer before he did PEDs. If he actually did it, and let's come on, let's be honest, like he probably did, you know. Um, but he was so jealous of the attention that McGuire and Sosa and those guys and Brady Anderson and those guys were getting.
Ken Seiko is also always a giant human.
Right. And that's why I think it's a lot harder to say where McGuire or Sosa was actually doing steroids because they were already such big men to begin with.
Yeah,
And at the end of the day, like what Bonds was doing, steroids didn't help him. Like
right.
he was already one of the better hitters and a big time home run hitter. His home runs, instead of going 400 feet, were going 430 feet. Or, so he was already hitting home runs. He was already hitting what he was hitting. So it was like, I mean, it kept him on the field longer. I mean, that's what Ryan Braun was doing steroids. It wasn't to be a massive home run hitter or a big time hitter. Ryan Braun was taking steroids to stay on the field because it was helping him heal faster
Yeah.
and stay healthy. I mean, it also ultimately ended Ryan Braun's career because it also broke his body down faster. But and that's the thing with like Barry Bonds. Like Barry Bonds didn't need to take steroids to be considered one of the greatest players of all time. He did it because he was jealous. Like the people other than him were getting all the media attention.
So would you put Bonds in?
Absolutely, I'd put Bonds in.
But Sosa, no.
I don't know honestly if Sosa's numbers are good enough to be a Hall of Famer. Because
Didn't Sosa also get caught corking bats?
yes, that too. And that's the thing. Like, I mean, like McGuire's numbers, I don't know if Canseco would be in the Hall of Fame because I don't know, like, career wise, like his, overarching career is good enough to be in the Hall of Fame. Same thing with Sosa. But like Rafael Palmeiro, Roger Clemens, McGuire, Bonds, like those guys' careers were good enough to be in the Hall of Fame. And I don't know. I mean, it probably turned a few doubles into home runs instead of, so maybe instead of hitting, 65 home runs, Bonds hit 75 home runs, but like, he's still going to have hit that many home runs. It wasn't like, and but that's my argument is kind of null and void when it comes to Sosa because before the steroids, Sosa was like a 10 home run guy a year, and then all of a sudden he's hitting 60.
Right.
I mean, steroids didn't make these guys have the ability to hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball.
No,
I could take all the steroids in the world. I'm going to go up there and I'm still not going to be able to hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball.
you might. You're not going to hit it very far. You might tink it into the dirt. You'll get a piece of it.
Yeah. I
One out
mean,
of every 50.
but I mean, what was the guy?
I would just go up there and bunt.
He played for the Texas Rangers. What was his name? I can't remember. He was But he took so many steroids, he actually had a hard time like his career ended because like he got so big and big in the wrong way that he had a hard time swinging the bat right anymore because his chest and his back got so, big. Like he developed muscles the wrong way.
Oh, all right.
Was it Juan Gonzalez? I want to say it was Juan Gonzalez. But I don't know. I mean, it was, I'm torn because it's kind of like the other reason that I say some of these guys are more eligible for the Hall of Fame than like say A-Rod is that until was it 04 or 05, maybe even 08, steroids wasn't illegal in baseball. Like there was not technically a rule against it until then. So
All
that
right.
like there wasn't a rule that said you couldn't do it. Like
Yeah. Everyone had the opportunity, like the torpedo bats.
right.
There's no rule against it, but not everybody does it.
Yes. Um is it good? Is it right? Does it question the integrity of the game? Probably, but it wasn't technically illegal. Now, players like A-Rod who got popped after the ban went into effect and got suspended for it, are like the guy today, the reliever for the Phillies, who got an 80-game suspension for PEDs. I have different feelings about them because it now is illegal, and we know better. Before 04 or 05, like, can you really say that any player who was taking PEDs before it was illegal in baseball shouldn't be eligible for the Hall of Fame because you just don't like it?
All right. I I think they need to be eligible.
You know, so I do think that at some point there's going to be a veterans committee that sits down and says these players are going to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if they need to have a separate wing for them or they need to come up with some sort of proficient way of putting on an asterisk that is like there's also this. But yeah,
Right.
I do think that at some point there is going to be a movement to get those players into the Hall of Fame.
Are you talking about just strictly baseball or all Hall of Fame?
More
Is
baseball
it,
because
I'd say, is it Ray Lewis in the Hall of Fame?
yeah, more baseball
And
because
yeah, he's got some stuff.
football has pretty much always looked the other way on PEDs and drugs in general.
I'm thinking like Lewis is off the field stuff or Stallworth's off the field. Granted, Stallworth's not a Hall of Fame player.
Right.
Brett Favre's got some things coming out now.
Yeah, I mean there's football has always kind of looked the other way on a lot of that kind of stuff. I don't know too many players who aren't in the Hall of Fame because, you know, like, well, what was that guy who played for the Giants and he was in Waterboy? Um,
I, and the Giants.
yeah,
The
he
only
was
one I'm thinking about is I'm thinking Bill
Lawrence Taylor.
Romanowski. Oh, I'll say
Lawrence
Bill
Taylor.
Romanowski.
Yeah, well, they're all right. Bill Romanowski's probably a better option because Bill Romanowski was just a monster on the field and did all
Yeah,
sorts of terrible things off the field and from all accounts probably wasn't that great of a person on the
no,
field off the field either.
not Waterboy's longest yard was
Yeah,
Bill
yeah.
Romanowski.
Um he has actually probably cleaned up his image a lot now that he's the general manager. And but but Lawrence
Uh,
Taylor had all those drug issues, and he's in the Hall of Fame. So
right.
football seems to look the other way on a lot of that stuff. Basketball, I don't understand how, because I think basketball votes in a lot of the like WNBA stuff too, because it isn't just, not that there is a football, there's not a bunch of women in the Hall of Fame for football because there are no women in football, unless
Other
maybe there,
than I'd say
unless,
you got refs and you got athletic directors and stuff
yeah, I
like
mean,
that.
maybe, I don't know if like, what Georgia Frontiere, the lady who owned the Rams, or what was the Virginia McCaskey? Was that her name?
Yeah,
The owner of the, I don't know
the
if
Bears.
owners, I don't know if the owners make it into the Hall of Fame or not, but I know, and I didn't, I left, there's a lot of people I left off the list. I know there's a couple of you out here there who are listening to this episode going, well, what about this player? What about that player? If I didn't talk about them, one, I didn't do a lot of research. Two, a lot of these people like Marge Schott, the owner of the Reds, who was kicked out of baseball because of her racist nonsense, was eventually reinstated. I mean, she was never really allowed back into baseball, and I think maybe some of her reinstatement was more of just like, whatever. But so there was a lot of people who had been given lifetime bans in baseball, but were later reinstated for whatever reason.
Right,
So I didn't write any of those ones down. These are people who were lifetime reinstated, and they were lifetime banned, and then until last week when Rob Manfred changed the rules, were never back in. And I don't.
what do you think made him change the rule?
I think there was a lot of public pressure, political pressure, and I think honestly it was the Pete Rose of it all. Because I don't think people care that much about the Shoeless Joe Jackson thing. Because one, it was 1919, so it was literally over 100 years ago.
Right,
I think it was more of a, Pete Rose, you punished Pete Rose and now he's dead. What are you going to do? And now that
right.
he's dead, like,
He should be in, but he never lived to see this kind of
right,
you monster.
yes. And like I said, like there was a lot of opportunities that Pete Rose had to get one of these commissioners, Seelig or Manfred in particular, to say yes, like, all right, we'll let you back in or we'll reinstate you. But because he didn't, capitulate, because he didn't throw himself prostrate at the ground and say, "Oh, you're right, I was wrong." Like, he held strong of like, I didn't do it, or I did it, but it didn't do it the way you said I did it. I did it the way you
Uh,
said I did it, but it shouldn't matter. Or
right.
you know, moving to Vegas and living there pretty much permanently the last however many years of his life and making his money off of lifetime gambling and card shows. And I mean, he didn't play ball. And I think had he just been like, all right, you're right, and look at me, oh,
Yep, yep.
but whatever, it is what it is. So that is our talk on baseball. I do think at the end of the day, and I don't know, maybe I don't know if you have a different opinion. I don't know if our listeners have a different opinion. I think gambling has much more rotten implications than PEDs does.
So you say gambling is worse.
Yes, I do think gambling, because I mean we talked about it, like, you know,
I mean, if you're a football player and you're gambling on football, yes, but like what happens if it's a football guy betting on a basketball game?
that's different.
So if it's your direct sport,
Yes,
knock that shit off. But if you're gonna go bet on the Kentucky Derby,
no problem.
go for it. Okay.
Absolutely. You know, and that's like at the end of the day, like that's because of all the point shaving scandals we talked about in basketball. It's way too easy for you to be like, if you're gambling on basketball, or basketball, I think is the easier sport to fix just because you can a lot easier miss a shot or just not
Uh,
take a shot.
if he makes this free throw, oh, I missed it.
Right, which is where like the point shaving scandal of Boston College or CCNY, or I think there was a guy from Arizona State. I seem to remember watching a movie about that, like getting caught up in the world of organized crime or in just gambling, or Jonte Porter, like just gambling on himself, like fixing games. Like it's too tempting if you're gambling on your own sport to maybe do something to kind of, sweeten the pot a little bit.
Right.
You know, hey, 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 this guy's gonna play today because he's been injured. We just haven't released the injured list just yet. Put an extra 100 on the Knicks to win because of whatever.
Yeah, because Ewing's gonna be out or something.
Right.
Yeah.
It's more of the perception, and it's so much like it's just a slippery slope. So if you're a baseball player and you're only gambling on basketball or football, I there's not a problem there. It's when you're a baseball player and you start gambling on baseball. Even if you're like, well, I play for the Rockies, but I never gamble on a Rocky game. I only gamble on the Mets, and when they're not playing us, it's just it's way too sketchy. You're asking for
Yeah.
trouble.
That's fair.
Because it used to be that those guys weren't even allowed to like enter Las Vegas, like let alone like enter a casino. Like, yeah, it
Yeah,
used
and
to
there's
be.
just so many different like apps and online
Well,
too.
and now that half the sports, if not all of them, are brought to you by FanDuel, brought to you by Sportsbook, brought to you by Circuit,
DraftKings.
DraftKings, which we will gladly take any sort of sponsorship you want us to start reading DraftKings ads, we will do it.
Hell yeah, especially when one of us has used them, whether or not it is legal or not in this state or as an owner of a certain franchise.
I have gambled on sports. I was in New Jersey at the time where it was legal.
I was in Tennessee at the time where it's legal.
Right, but so I do think that PEDs is like you're trying to do something to help you win. You're trying to do something to help you better. Is it cheating? Yes, but it's not cheating in the same way that gambling would be, because gambling is just it's way too easy to be like, maybe if I don't swing at this pitch, I uh I get an extra 100 grand or whatever. I don't. Okay, all right, guys. Sorry about that. We were pretty much done with that conversation, but it seems that we've had some technical difficulties and Justin lost connection or something. So we were pretty much done with that conversation. As you could tell, we were kind of wrapping up. We were getting to the section of what did we watch recently. So I'm just going to tell you what I watched recently. I watched Novocaine on Peacock. Um, it's that Jack Quaid movie where he can't feel any pain. It was fun. It was ridiculous. It was kind of over the top, but it was fun. It's definitely worth watching. Totally enjoyed it. And then I watched Love Hurts with oh, how do you pronounce it? The guy from Everything Everywhere All at Once, and Ki Hu Kwan. Um it was kind of I don't know. It didn't. It felt like it was lacking. It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't. It wasn't. It just wasn't all that great. So, I mean, it's not a bad watch. It's just not like it's kind of a movie. Um. Anyway, that's all I've really watched over the last couple weeks. So recommend Novocaine. Don't necessarily recommend Love Hurts, but it wasn't bad. Oh, the one thing I will say about Love Hurts was that as a person who lives in Milwaukee, they set the movie in Milwaukee in February, and everybody was walking around in a light jacket or no jacket, and the grass was green. And come on, Hollywood, just do better. Like, if you're gonna set a movie in an actual physical location, maybe research a little bit. You're gonna set it around Valentine's Day in Milwaukee. There should probably be snow on the ground. It should be a little chillier. Nobody's grass is nice, bright and green. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So I guess if you did a movie, a big budget movie, and you didn't pay attention to where you set it, just remember, stupid never walks alone.
Comic books have been around for almost a century, and in the last 2 decades, we've finally gotten to see many of these characters brought to life in movies and on TV. On the Moving Panels podcast, we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. Join me and my guests as we discuss both the good and the bad from Marvel, DC, and even some of the lesser-known comic book companies. Learn what is and isn't from the comics, as well as our nerdy review of the movie or show. New episodes drop every Monday, and you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. So join us for Moving Panels, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and listen to an 80s Flick Flashback podcast once in a while, you could miss it. Do you love movies of a certain age? Do you miss the days of VHS tapes, VCRs, and the video rental stores? Does the thought of another 80s movie being remade seem inconceivable? My name is Tim Williams. I'm the creator and host of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. On each episode, I'm joined by guest co-hosts to discuss one of the many movies released in the 1980s. We share our first-time watch memories, our favorite scenes, and even learn some behind-the-scenes stories about the cast and crew along the way. New episodes are released every other Friday on your favorite podcasting platform. So make like a tree, get out of here, and go listen to an excellent episode of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. The ad is over. Go home. Go.